My parents were Christians. My father was a major in the Royal Engineers. My mother loved the army more than my father did. I was therefore born in Lahore, which today is in Pakistan. My father was frequently absent during my childhood, but I was left by the time I was a mid-teenager with two great impressions. And one was that there is nothing but nothing in the whole world which matters more than spiritual things. And the other great impression I was left with was that whatever counts in person's character, they must have integrity. Integrity is sacred. And that was the great impression left upon me by my parents, to the point where part of me yearned to become a Christian like them. And the other half of me detested the very thought of that, because I knew I would lose my friends, I would lose what little popularity I enjoyed. I probably wouldn't be able to pursue my life's ambitions. So I was in a real mess by the time I was a teenager. I was completely torn, being pulled in two directions, and more or less made up my mind that despite the wonderful parents I had, I would turn my back on it all and go the way my friends were urging me to go. At that point, I went to stay with one of my grandmothers in Essex. I had two grandmothers who lived in the same town. A Welsh one who was a lovely Christian, and a non-Welsh one who was a professing Christian, but as far as I can see wasn't really at all. It came to Sunday, and I had no desire to go to church, and I thought, this is the day I make my break. And my grandmother didn't insist I went to church, so Sunday morning I was as free as a bird and felt like at last I'd been liberated. I could return to my parents and say, I've made the break, I've decided what I want. But as the afternoon drew on, for a reason I can't possibly explain except in spiritual terms, I became restless and dissatisfied and hungry inside, and knew that I wanted to be in the presence of the Word of God. But I didn't want to be converted. I knew in the town where I was that there was a large Baptist church where the minister, who was a family friend, didn't preach the gospel, although he had done so as a younger man. So I wanted to be in the presence of Christian things, but I didn't want to be converted. So I decided I'd go to that church that Sunday evening. And the minister that we knew, he took the service, and it was just a normal sort of thing that went on. Left me completely untouched and unmoved. And then just as I thought he was going to preach, he announced that he was not going to preach that night, but he'd asked a friend to come and tell the congregation his life story. This dear man who stood up, whose name I don't know to this day, spoke for 55 minutes about how the Lord had completely transformed him from a criminal and alcoholic background. And as he spoke, I had an enormous sense of God, and bewilderment and lostness and despair and disorientation, a sense of impending judgment, a sense of sin, but overwhelmingly a sense of God. It invaded my whole character, my whole inner spirit. I didn't understand how Christ could save people on the cross, but I knew that somehow or other on the cross he had done something by which people like me could be rescued. So before the service had ended, I had cried out to Christ that perhaps he would have mercy on me and think on me, and left the service completely terrified, but knowing that something had happened inside me, which as far as I could see was going to be irreversible. And that proved to be the case. So that's how I came into the Christian life, in a moment of extraordinary trauma.